As immigrant groups waited anxiously outside, the Supreme Court dealt a big setback to the Trump administration's plan to ask everyone if they're a U.S. citizen on the census form that goes to all households next year.
Can you imagine you send out a census and you're not allowed to say whether or not a person's an American citizen?
Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said he ordered the question added after the Justice Department said the data would help carry out the Voting Rights Act. That was widely criticized as a tall tale, and today the Supreme Court didn't buy it. By a 5-4 vote, Chief Justice Roberts joined by the 4 liberals, the court said that explanation was more of a distraction, calling it contrived. The ruling blocked the government from adding the citizenship question, a victory for 17 states that sued.
Every single person in this country deserves to be counted, plain and simple. And today, thanks to the Supreme Court's decision, we will have an opportunity to do just that.
The state said the question would suppress responses from immigrants like Jessica Macias Mercado of California, leading to an undercount.
It's mostly the panic that has been instilled over generations or over decades of being told that you could easily be deported.
The census determines how many members each state gets in the House of Representatives and how much states get in federal grants. Today's ruling gives the government another chance to come up with an explanation for why it needs the citizenship question, and that will start another court battle. The Census Bureau says it needs to start preparing the forms in just a few days, but tonight President Trump tweeted that he's asking government lawyers if they can delay the census until the Supreme Court is given more information.
All right, Pete joins us now. Pete, there's also that other major ruling today on how voting districts are carved up to favor a political party, what's known as partisan gerrymandering.
Right, Lester. In 2 cases from North Carolina and Maryland, the court said it's not for federal judges to weigh in when states draw the maps for their legislative and congressional districts and strongly favor the party in power. This was a 5-4 ruling with the conservatives in the majority saying courts have no authority to reallocate political power between the major parties. If this decision had gone the other way, it could have led to changes in who controls Congress and state legislatures. Justice Elena Kagan said today the court failed in its role of protecting free and fair elections.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.